Welcome to the KBB Review podcast. This is episode 6 of season 14, and I'm Andy Davies as always. Today, we're looking at an area that I think gets to the heart of what good design is all about. Understanding and interpreting the needs of those that are going to use the kitchen or bathroom every day is a vital part of any brief, and that includes not just factoring in extended family and friends, but also future-proofing for the potential needs to come. We've talked a lot about multi-generational design in the context of physicality, but today we're going to look at how usable kitchens and bathrooms are vital for those with cognitive impairments, in particular dementia. Jeyes is our guest today, and she's a designer specialising in, amongst other things, dementia-friendly design. So we're going to find out what that actually means, the role of good KBB design in maintaining independence and dignity, how to broach and discuss this with clients, and of course, lots of actual practical tips. This is so interesting, and for me, it really underpins the power of good design in making people's lives better. But first, a quick reminder that the KBB Review Retail and Design Awards are in the iconic Blackpool Tower Ballroom on Thursday, April the 24th, and we are officially 100% sold out. However, when you have that many people, there is always a chance some cancellations do happen, so we are running a waiting list. As soon as a ticket becomes available, it will be offered to whoever is next in line on that list. It's first come, first serve, so go to kbbreview.com/awards and you'll find out how to get in the queue. That link is in the episode description, so it's always worth the call. So, down the line here, as promised, here is Jeyes. Hello, Jo.
Hi.
Let's start with a bit about you, Jo. Can you just sort of outline for us what exactly you do and what you specialise in?
Okay, so I'm Jo of Joanne Jeyes Interiors. I'm an interior designer who specialises in accessible and inclusive design, which also includes dementia-friendly design, which we'll talk about more. I began my career writing about homes and interiors back in the 1990s.
Didn't we all, Jo? Didn't we all?
I am responsible for rag rolling, I'm sorry. Worked on various magazines, fast forward a couple of decades, various jobs, various countries. In 2018, we were moving back, relocating from Singapore and looking for somewhere to live. Came across what's outside my window now, which is a World War II Nissan hut that had been partly developed. And I saw that as an opportunity. Always been interested in architecture, always loved interiors and thought, here's a project for me. Got nothing else to do, didn't have a job. So for a year, I was project managing, converting this into a home, and took a diploma in interior design, and kind of that's where it started. 2019, I started what was then called Crocus Interior Design, working mainly in residential, but I did do a couple of commercial spaces, one of which is the base in Chelmsford. I'm based in Essex. And the base is a day centre for young adults with special needs. I did that job pro bono because firstly, I was new to accessible design, but also my son was going there and it was kind of like a passion project, I suppose. The guy who ran Independence Project had rented out this industrial space and wanted to turn it into this fantastic day centre, the main part of which was going to be this accessible life skills training kitchen. Jo, can you help? And I'm like, yeah, of course I can. Yeah, let's do this. Let's do it. Luckily, a year or so before, I'd met Adam Thomas. So, tick for me. He'd inspired me. I loved what he did with Symphony Kitchens. We'd had a long chat at a trade show, kept in touch. So I rang him and I was like, Adam, can I do this? He's like, Jo, you've got this. You can do this. He is my go-to. He's brilliant. He's been so helpful to me. So I did that. That went really well. Worked with Symphony Kitchens on that. Then there was a specialist gym in Holton Park, which is near Colchester, a guy called Matt, who had, again, worked with my son. You can see a theme here. And he said, Jo, I've got this cupboard. I've got this unused office space cupboard that I'd like to turn into a sensory gym. And I was like, yeah, we could do that. So we did that. And it was kind of those two projects and the frustrations I felt as a parent of a young adult with special needs and having family members with varying needs, the frustration at the lack of nice design out there. So I kind of took the decision last year to rebrand, turned into Joanne Jeyes Interiors, owned myself, as people say, and now I specialise in accessible and inclusive design with a slant towards dementia-friendly design. And that is, again, purely personal. My mum had dementia. She lived with dementia, and she moved in with me when we lost my dad. And it was then that my eyes were really open to how the built environment can help people or hinder people maintaining their dignity, their independence, and their sense of belonging. I also noticed how her needs crossed over with my son's, mainly around the sensory needs, and I saw the big overlap. So I then began to learn more about accessible, inclusive, dementia-friendly design. I never know what the correct term is. And now through Jeyes Interiors, I'm looking to help people create spaces that still look beautiful. They have to still feel and look beautiful, but they need to work long term.
I think it's interesting how so many people in this area come at it through personal experience.
Yeah.
And as you say, it's an eye-opening experience, isn't it? It's when you actually suddenly need to look for this kind of stuff for your own personal circumstances, and you suddenly realise that it just isn't there.
No, or if it is, being missed.
Yes, or it's very clinical. It's a very medical feeling thing. And of course, if you talk to anybody with any kind of needs, that's the last thing that they want. They want to feel like it's a home, and they deserve to have as much design aesthetic skill put into it as anything else. And that's what makes this area so interesting. And as you say, Adam's a friend of the podcast, and we've spoken to him many times. But this is why I think it's interesting, because obviously his specialism is the sort of physicality of accessible environments of kitchens and bathrooms. But we've never really touched upon the dementia side of it. So you're a specialist in this, and obviously specialisms come with a lot of expertise. But do you think it's important that all kitchen and bathroom designers should have some level of awareness of this kind of thing for all the reasons we've described?
I think they'd be silly if they don't, because honestly, it's not a niche. It's not a niche. It's just good design. I think if general designers start thinking about it more, that accessibility isn't just about disability, it's about life. So at some point, most of us will experience living with someone that's older, will have, will break a leg, will break an arm, or have a specific sensory or mobility need in our home. We will live with somebody or experience that ourselves. And multi-generational living, I think, is on the rise. So we need to find spaces that work for kids, parents, grandparents, all of us living together. Kitchens and bathrooms are the high-risk areas in every home. We all know that. So we need to get them right. And if you don't future-proof your home as a designer, if you don't future-proof your client's home, you're doing them a disservice, really, because you need to add value and make those spaces usable and safe for years to come. So I think it's something that designers need to embrace. And I think they are. I think more people are. I'm getting lots of people asking me about it.
Yeah, I think that's true. Although there's a phrase that you've used a couple of times there, which is dementia-friendly.
Yeah.
What does that mean exactly? Because I suppose, look, you're a specialist, and I suppose there are very specialist projects that you do, daycare centres, etc. They are very specialised places. But we're talking about the slight adaptation of quote-unquote normal spaces.
Yeah.
Right? I suppose it's the level of expertise that designers should have on an everyday level of what is dementia-friendly. What does that actually mean?
Well, I think that starts with, and again, and without a doubt, you said at the start, it comes from personal experience. You only know what you know, right? And then you learn. So if you have dementia, if we talk about dementia particularly, that affects your memory, your perception, your coordination, and your ability to make decisions, decision making. So the goal in making a dementia-friendly space is to create a space that reduces that confusion and increases your confidence. So the key elements would be safety, orientation, and comfort. So focusing on simple, intuitive layouts. I think a lot about sensory design, because people with dementia can be sensitive to their environment. It's about creating spaces that people can feel at ease in. Community spaces especially. It's important that these designs are inclusive of everyone with accessibility needs. So
let's step back a little bit, because I just want to bring up something you mentioned there about future-proofing. How much of your work is an immediate need, and how much is future-proofing?
I'd say all of it's immediate need. The key to it is getting clients to realise that they need to think about future-proofing. So without obviously being indiscreet in any way, I had a client a year or so ago whose wife had a stroke, and there was probably dementia going on as well. So he wanted to talk to me about future-proofing. She didn't. So it's a really gentle and open, I'm always open, conversation around, do you see yourself staying in this home for a long time? Is this where you're going to stay? If so, how do we make it work for you? Not just now, but in 10 years' time. And that's the same. I've got a new client I'm going to see next week, and they've already said to me, "Oh, well, no, we're not worried about that." But I will push it. I will say to them, "Wouldn't it be nice if this space works for you, no matter what happens? Have you thought about, what might happen if something awful happens?" A question I always ask is, do you have older relatives that visit or come and stay with you? And have you considered how your home would work if they needed to stay with you for a longer period of time? Because, that playroom that we're designing could easily become a downstairs bedroom, or that downstairs cloakroom, could we extend it slightly and make it a wet room? It's thinking about that kind of thing. So I'm meeting their immediate need because I'm making their house functional for how they want it now. But I do always bring up the conversation around what might it look like in 10, 20 years' time.
It's a very sensitive conversation to have, isn't it? Very sensitive. Designers are so multi-skilled in what they do, and I think the bit that's underappreciated or isn't talked about enough is the interaction, the conversations that you have to have with the client that aren't necessarily easy.
No.
And I only know from my own parents, they're both 80 this year, and to have a conversation with them about this, there is an issue with it at the moment, luckily, but they would not want to do it. They don't like acknowledging that they're 80. It's the last thing they want to do. And certainly even just discussing any physical limitations that they may have is very difficult. So to be able to sit in front of them and unless they've come to you because of your specialism, but if not, to say, look, you're 75 years old, this kitchen's going to last you 20 years, you really need to think about it. That's a hard conversation to bring up.
It is. And if we take it back to perhaps if I'm working with somebody who has had that diagnosis of dementia, that is an awful time. Awful time. Everybody concerned. Everybody is scared. Everybody is looking to the future and running from it at the same time. So to go in there and say, well, you're going to need a downstairs loo and probably quite a lot of space in that, it's personal stuff you're talking about. And I guess this is where it's good to talk about it on things like podcasts, because we've got to normalise these conversations. They have to be something we're open about, and people don't always want to think about ageing, as you say. So I try not to make it too heavy, and I appreciate you saying that about designers, because sometimes I feel like a marriage counsellor, a guidance, all of it. I get really invested in my clients because I can spend a long time with them in their own homes, in their actual homes where they spend their quality time. But
I think it's the designers that make it a home. I think they can have lots of conversations with doctors or with occupational health therapists or whatever it might be, and they come at everything from a very clinical point of view, quite rightly so.
As they should, yeah.
Yeah, but it's designers that make a house a home. And equally, keeping people in their homes for as long as possible is a huge part of this, isn't it?
Yeah, and that is my driving force. I know, I wish I could have kept my mum at home longer, but we just weren't able to do it. Looking back now, there are so many things I would do differently. Hindsight's a great thing. So I want to be able to help other families. It's not for everybody, absolutely not for everybody to care for somebody at home with dementia, but it is more doable if you just make that space less confusing and more accessible to them and to the people who live there.
Okay, well, let's look at some of these specifics then. So let's talk very practically and dispassionately about it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
What are the kind of practical elements, the symptoms, if you like, for want of a better word, of dementia that you have to think about from the top down when you're doing a kitchen or a bathroom?
So memory, perception, coordination and decision-making, they're the things. I mean, there are so many other parts to dementia, obviously, so I'm just being really basic here. They're the things to think about. So keeping people safe, keeping people orientated and comfortable. In the kitchen, which is, the scariest, most dangerous place in the house, layout. Keep it as logical and uncluttered as you can. Get rid of all those unnecessary bits of cutlery and crockery and everything we all keep. Get rid of it. Try for wide, clear walkways, because mobility aids are probably going to come into play at some point. That's not always possible, but at least think about it. At least think about moving that. We've all got that little shelf that we stick on the end of the unit that we don't really need. Get rid of it. Now's the time. Now's the time to go in there and kind of get it all gone. Pull down shelves. So very much Adam's kind of thing that we talk about. We talk about accessible kitchen, pull down large shelves and pull out storage. Corner carousel storage. We've all got that corner cupboard. We all hate that corner cupboard. But if you've got to bend down and you find your depth perception is affected, you're not going to be able to do that. So make those corner cupboards, stick a carousel in. Yeah, it'll cost a couple £100, but that will make life so much easier. Contrast, we'll talk about this a lot more, I'm sure, but contrasting worktop. So dark counter with a light cupboard, the other way around. Waterfall edged worktops, brilliant, because if something gets spilt or boils over, It doesn't go on the floor. Nobody goes flying. Matte finishes. Now, this is an interesting one. Going for shiny gloss, which was a bit of a trend and, still around, a nightmare for someone with dementia because, one, it looks like it's wet. So they constantly feel like something's wet and it's glary and it really upsets their perception. So try and get some matte finishes in the kitchen where you can. Lighting, natural lighting, under cabinets, motion sensor, anti-glare. They're all so important. Keep that space as well lit as you can because those dark corners will come back to bite you. So avoiding shiny surfaces, also avoiding patterned surfaces. My mum used to do this thing where she'd pick at the tiled top that had a pattern on it because she thought that was something she should move out the way. She was a very tidy person. She would clean everything constantly. And she thought that meant there was something on it. So it's confusing to people to see a pattern. We see a pretty flower. They see an actual flower. What's that doing in front of me? Get rid of that. Non-slip flooring, no-brainer. Got to have non-slip flooring in the kitchen. Mats, yes, they're good. Ideally, replace the flooring for something like textured vinyl or anti-slip tiles. Soft close cupboards. Now, they're not great for everybody. My son's friend told me about this. He's in a wheelchair and has problems with soft close cupboards. So they're not great for all needs, but they do stop slamming, which upsets people with dementia. All natural materials coming back to sensory, soft touch, lovely, nice feels, make something more comfortable. Induction hobs. Please fit an induction hob, please. Safety and just ease of use. Lever taps are great. Although I'd caveat that with, lever taps are great, but depending on the stage and how well you'd get to know the person. But the old-fashioned twisty with the H and the C on? They're great because that's what people will remember. They understand what the H stands for and what the C stands for. So if you're going to go lever taps, great, but make sure it's very clear which is hot and which is cold.
Well, I've talked about this with Adam a lot. There are lots of products out on the market that are great for these kind of needs, but aren't advertised or marketed in that way. They used to have the LED light in the tap that would be red when it was hot and blue when it was cold because it just looked cool. Whereas actually for this kind of application, it's fantastic, I'm assuming, to have a very visual representation of whether something's incredibly hot or cold.
Whilst memory goes, there are some things that will always be, hopefully, will be remembered, and most people still seem to remember red for danger.
And what about routine? I remember talking to up at the Newcastle Centre for Ageing. He's been on the podcast before, Peter Gore, and he talked about the need for, you're making a cup of tea, but what happens is you don't forget how to make a cup of tea, but you forget the order of things that happen to make that tea. So it's quite common to put milk in the kettle and things like that because you've just fallen out of the routine. So, for those everyday things that you do, like making a cup of tea, how can you make that simpler or easier in terms of the layout of the thing or the ease of use of it?
So I would suggest to people, and this comes down to, there is an element of, okay, it's not going to look as beautiful as it possibly could when you were without this new condition that you're living with, but get that cupboard door off. You don't need that cupboard door. That cupboard door is just to your family member with dementia saying, I don't know what's behind this, so I'm not going to open it because I'm not sure if I can, not sure if I'm allowed. Anything could fall out, anything could jump out. So if you took the cupboard door off, simplified the shelving inside, or even get rid of the cupboard and have open shelving, and just have your basic everyday needs, so the tea, the coffee, the sugar canister, that is something that's very familiar. Don't go and buy new ones. Do not go and buy new ones. Stick to if you can get a repeat of something that is familiar to them, get on Etsy or eBay or whatever, and put them right by the kettle and remove everything else. Remove anything else that could distract or make them feel confused is the key to it. I mean, I'd go so far as, but I've lived with a child with additional needs, I would go so far as putting up like this is what you do when you make a cup of tea, laminated sheet of paper, which I know feels awful and I know feels childish, but bloody hell, it would save a lot of hassle because that person will refer to it. Doesn't mean it has to stay out all the time. Maybe it's something you only get out when you're at home alone. I don't know. I don't see why you should be embarrassed about it. We have that kind of thing
But
everywhere.
it's thinking about it, isn't it? It's having this at the front of your mind to understand that this might be something that's required. I mean, my wife makes lists for me all the time. And you talk about the danger of the kitchen, and there's lots of sharp things, obviously, but cooking is obviously a big part of it, and obviously induction's an obvious one. Do they help or hinder the way that appliances are designed or made? There's lots of functions, there's lots of buttons.
I do wonder, I thought this about an air fryer recently, I wonder if air fryers have made life easier for someone living with dementia because they're a very simplified oven and they don't tend to, you can't burn yourself as easily because my son can use the air fryer. So again, I go back to that similarity in need. There's, who is it who does that lovely big oven that's got the really obvious turn handles. There's none of this digital, just touch it and it might ping. Yeah, it has to be really clear. So any appliance, I wouldn't replace appliances unless you had to, because that's just going to confuse someone. And if you are replacing appliances, do like for like. And whilst there's great stuff going on with tech, there is a lot to be said for very simplistic controls, as simple as you can, on and off, this hot, this cold. So I think some of the newer appliances are doing great stuff for people with accessible needs. Some just making life complicated.
And as we say, being able to cook for yourself is a big part of staying in your home, isn't it? I remember up in Newcastle, this place had the fridge door connected to the actual lights in the room. So if the fridge door was left open, you couldn't turn the lights on or off in the room, rather than just a beep or something. It was a very visual thing to say, hang on, you've left the fridge door open. And it's so simple, isn't it? But it makes a massive difference. And I suppose we talk about a lot of new projects and stuff here, but a lot of this can be applied to just modifying an existing kitchen, couldn't it?
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah. So one of the services I'm trying to get out there is I really want to be able to offer something to families whereby I can go around there or somebody can go around there and say, these are the 5 simple things you can do in your house right now. You don't need to renovate. You don't need to fit a wet room. This is what you can do. And there are some really simple ways to modify what you've got already. You definitely don't need a full renovation. Should we talk about contrast? So contrast, you'll get this talked about a lot with dementia. So it's all about colour contrast. People with dementia or visual impairments struggle with, as I said before, depth perception. So adding contrast can help them navigate. We talk about having this 30 point of contrast, which is the difference between 2 colours standing out from one another. So like black ink on white paper is really easy to read, but light grey on white paper is hard. So that's low contrast. And it matters because I don't know if you've ever seen anybody with dementia trying to sit down on a chair. So you've got your lovely blue armchair that you've obviously designed very lovely in your lovely blue sitting room with your blue carpet. And there's a tiny little shade of difference because that's how we design a room, right? You've got lovely blue cushions, might be a shade darker. But that person with dementia, all they see is blue. They can't see an edge. They can't see an end or a start to their So they'll kind of do this padding around and it can take 2 or 3 minutes to sit down. Whereas I say to people, if you can put some piping around the edge of that sofa or armchair, put a dark cushion pad on it, and that difference in contrast will help them see where things start and where things end. And that can go on to door handles, because if you can't see a door handle, how are you going to get out the door? Door frames painted in a contrasting colour, light switches.
A handleless kitchen.
Or a handleless kitchen, even better. Although that can sometimes be the more elderly people that are experiencing dementia can sometimes find handleless confusing as well because they don't remember a time it happened. So they don't know what to do. They just see a blank space. So that kind of depends on where they are in their journey. But it certainly is more accessible than trying to find that tiny little pull handle that's there somewhere. Easy swaps, change worktops or backsplashes, update toilet seats. Please, God, if everybody could just update their nice, lovely, light-coloured toilet seat to a bright red one.
Let's go into that because we've done kitchens, haven't we, a bit here. Let's talk about the difference with bathrooms. A lot of the same principles apply in contrast and lighting and all that kind of thing. But again, being able to use the toilet and being able to wash yourself, big part of staying in the home. So, okay, a bright red toilet seat.
Yeah, not ideal. As a designer, that makes me shudder slightly. So call out to all of the designers, manufacturers of bathrooms out there, please design some coloured toilet seats that look really stylish. There are some out there, but even if it's a mahogany one, remember those days in the 90s, 80s, where we all had mahogany toilet seats, the real wood ones? Yikes.
Yeah, so what are the main things here with it? Obviously, using the toilet, it's a pretty functional thing.
Toilet's white, and the floor's white, and the seat's white.
Yeah.
How are you going to know where you're sitting? You've got to touch it, right? That's not great. Whereas if you have a darker, it can be black, dark black, wooden, whatever, coloured toilet seat, it's a visual, you can actually see it. You can see the contrast, you can see where it starts and ends, you know where you're going to park yourself. It all becomes much more dignified. It's all about dignity.
What about showering and things like that?
Showering, walk-in showers, overstepping bath, that's, clearly we we would all figure that out. It's probably the first thing everybody thinks about is the shower. You know, how are we going to shower? Get rid of the bath, even if it means, sadly, not having a bath in the house. Sadly, a lot of people with dementia, what actually puts them in a care home is a fall. So, you know, let's avoid those falls where we can. And if it means you can't have a bath, do you know what? Go find someone who has a bath. I'm sure they'll let you use theirs. So a walk-in shower, as low profile as possible. Wall-hung toilet, great idea because they can be set to a height.
But you talked about gloss versus matte in the kitchen, and obviously in the bathroom, everything's shiny pretty much.
Yeah, so if you can get rid of the gloss tiles, I would recommend that. Mirrors in bathrooms are not great for people with dementia. There's a lovely lady I met last year whose name I can't remember, and she has created this clever little device for a mirror that you just flip it round, because someone with dementia doesn't see the reflection in the mirror isn't who they think they are. So they are genuinely shocked by that person in the mirror, and they assume it's somebody else. And so that's, you know, scary and worrying and upsetting and all of that. So it's better just to hide the mirrors, get a little blind to go over it maybe. But yeah, shiny surfaces are not great. Try and get rid of the glare any way you can, really. Grab rails are a given. Again, shouting out to anyone making nice looking grab rails. Nobody wants a white, horrible plastic grab rail in their bathroom. Please make some nice antique brass ones if you can. What else? Sensor taps in bathrooms to prevent scalding, or lever taps, and then back to colour contrast in the light switches, towels. One of the funniest not funny at all things about when I had mum living with me was we were really lucky. We had a downstairs bedroom. We had a downstairs bathroom that was right next to the bedroom, and this bathroom was nice and big. It was a Jack and Jill bathroom, so it had 2 doors, and it had a nice big open walk-in shower, low profile, but it was dark grey. And I didn't know this at the time. And then outside the dark grey shower tray was a black mat. What I didn't realise until it took me a few weeks to realise is every time mum felt she was stepping over a black hole to walk into a black hole, because her depth perception meant just looked like a lot of black holes. And and I could never work out how she was so nervous. She suddenly wasn't able to walk. And it was because I later found out she felt like she was walking into a black hole. So it's that kind of, the contrast, colour contrast can go both ways. So you have to be aware of these things. That's the very first thing I tell anybody who asks me about how they can make their home more dementia friendly. Get rid of your black mats, get rid of your doormat, get rid of your bath mat, because it just looks like a black hole. How easy is that to do? Why can't we all do that?
It is. And you know what? If you kind of put aside how awful it must be to be in that situation, it's absolutely fascinating the way the brain works, isn't it?
Isn't it?
You know, it really is. And the role that good design can play in this, over and above aesthetics, is so interesting. And it, as you say, completely can transform somebody's day-to-day life, can't it?
Daily life, yeah. Everybody wants to shower, yeah.
Let's step outside of the home a little bit, because obviously by the time you got to that point, you're in the nitty-gritty of it. But what about the showrooms themselves? When people are kind of in there, just in their first journey, their first research, they're coming in to meet people for the first time. What should we have in a showroom?
So why aren't showrooms having all of these? You know, I think it's a marketing thing as much as anything. Why aren't the showrooms realising that they've already got the non-slip floor, the sensor lights, the pull-down shelves? That's already there. So if they can just rephrase things, market themselves to say, you know, we're creating spaces for people of all abilities, or this is designed with everyone in mind. I think it would be lovely to see more showrooms that have accessible kitchens as standard, at least one accessible kitchen in their showroom. A small area of obviously this is larger showrooms, but a small area showing how you could adapt that layout to suit somebody with dementia. So taking off the doors, having open shelving, decluttering slightly. But also I really think there's a space now more than ever, and I'd love to work with companies to do this. Let's kind of have designated dementia-friendly living spaces in showrooms that showcase these elements. Let's design a showroom it can just be for 6 months, but let's do that and make a big song and dance about it. Or could those showrooms host informational events or workshops, have interactive displays? 1 in 11 people in the UK have dementia right now. That's a huge demographic to be ignoring. And we all know that it will come to somebody we know and love. So if showrooms could start marketing what they have already, actually saying, how have you thought about having an induction hub? Because if you had somebody living with dementia, this would be a great safety element. Have you thought about having pull-out shelves so that anyone could reach them. And that's all stuff that's already there.
At the heart of all this, good designers, particularly kitchen and bathroom designers, want to do the right thing for their client, whatever their needs or brief may be.
Yeah.
They pride themselves on a very personal service, and this is the ultimate personal service, isn't it? It's about really understanding what it is that they want and they can do. So what's the future of this then, do you think? How far can this kind of subject matter go in terms of design, do you think?
It could go really far. I guess there's a monetary thing involved. You know, for me personally, I'm struggling with even the idea of charging someone to go into their home and help make their home dementia-friendly. So I get it. And I've spoken to Adam about this and he laughs in my face. He's like, Jo, that's fine. You are allowed to make money, but it makes me uncomfortable. And I think there's an element of that, probably with the bigger companies too. But also it is this whole awkwardness around it. And maybe, I always remember speaking to who came up with this grab rail for the kitchens. And he said, do not put the word dementia in any of your marketing because people will never want to admit that. And I find that so sad and so difficult to get my head around, but I can see it. I can see that they're just scared, I guess. People are scared of it and worried about it. So I do think the research that is going on is brilliant. And I think the products that will come out of it are brilliant. So there's no reason why showrooms can't start jumping on the bandwagon, as it were, in a respectful way. And maybe the way forward with that is to work collaboratively with people. So you're a kitchen designer. Like, I don't ever profess to be a great, fantastic kitchen designer. I always need the help of a proper kitchen designer. I can make a kitchen look beautiful and I understand how to design it, but I know there are elements that are the technical side of things that, you know, that's not my bag. And I think maybe kitchen showroom designers need to be more honest about that and say, actually, I don't know what it means to make a home dementia friendly. Jo, can you come in and help us? Or can we contact somebody at the Alzheimer's Society or Dementia UK who can give us some advice on how we can help this client? So it's about knowing your limitations and wanting to learn. I think for me, it's always been, you know, I'm still learning. I'm still very much at the start of this journey. You know, I haven't even scratched the surface yet. I know I haven't.
Look, Jo, thank you so much for sparing us some time today. It just shows, I think, as we've said, the ability of good design to really help make people's lives better. It's like an inexhaustible supply of goodwill, isn't it, when it's done properly and done well? And it isn't fluffy cushions all the time, is it? It's really life-affirming and life-improving stuff when it's done properly. And it's just glad there's guys like you and Adam around to sort of show that this stuff is quite straightforward and easy if you just know what you're looking for.
Yeah, and if you just try, if you just look and ask for the help or ask for the guidance, it's there.
Thank you so much for your time.
No worries, thank you. It's been a pleasure talking to you.